All right, welcome, my beautiful people. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Superhost status. We're going to talk about three things about that status. Number one is going to be what it is. Number two is what the benefits are for having that status. Then number three, and how to keep that status. Let's begin and let's just talk about what that Superhost status is. So Superhost status started back in 2016, and in essence, it was a reward that Airbnb gave those hosts that fit a certain criteria that they were looking for, right? It was really more to give a VIP status to those hosts that were doing the right thing. You see, back in 2016, or let's go back to 2015, really, Airbnb realized that they had an issue. They had two issues. The first issue was their review process had a lot of limitations. And then number two, they also realized in order for them to continue to grow, they really needed to professionalize hosting. Because up to that point, there was really no standard. There was nothing for a host to go by to create a standardization within the industry. It was really the Wild Wild West. And more importantly, in 2015, they realized that they no longer need to really focus and cater to the host. They really need to focus and cater to the guest. Why was that? Is because in 2014, actually 15, 16, and 17, and even till today, getting hosts is easy. There's a lot of people that jump down the short-term rental bandwagon because of its profitability. You know, a lot of people were making money on not just the Airbnb platform, but the many platforms that have started since Airbnb came about. But even before that, you gotta remember that the original booking platform was Booking.com, then we got Verbal, and then Airbnb came about. But point being is that in late 2015, early 2016, Airbnb realized that they needed to do something because in order for them to continue to grow, they needed more guests, not necessarily more hosts. And this is why that Superhost status came about. What is it? What's the criteria to get that Superhost status? Well, you need a couple of things. Here's the there's four things that you really need to have in order to obtain that Superhost status. Number one is that you need to have at least 10 stays over the past years, meaning 10 reservations or 10 bookings in a 12 calendar year. It's either that or you need 3 reservations for a total of 100 nights. That's requirement number one. Requirement number two is that you have at least, at a minimum, a 90% response rate to messages from your guests within a 24-hour period. The next is that you have a rating of 4.8 or higher overall. Now, here's what's important about this rating. One of the issues that I have with the Superhost status, but we're gonna get into that later on. But that 4.8 rating is not necessarily on the actual property. That 4.8 rating is for the account. So an account can have one property or you can have 100 properties. The point here is that the account needs to have a 4.8 rating or higher. Now I'm gonna tell you why that's important in a little bit. But next is, or the last criteria or requirement is that you have a cancellation rate of less than 1%. Now that cancellation rate excludes when you have to cancel for extenuating circumstances. I'm not going to get into what that is, but basically extenuating circumstance could be like the pandemic, it could be a hurricane, a natural disaster. That's what an extenuating circumstance is. I implore you to go ahead and really read what they are so that you have a full understanding of what that is. But simply put, Airbnb is looking for hosts who are active, they're responsive, they're reliable, and they have a high rating overall in the past year. So that's what they're looking for to get that Superhost status. Now, what does it mean? What's the significance of having that Superhost status? Well, as a Superhost, we used to say it gave you bragging rights, but it gives you much more than that. But it recognizes you as a top tier host, which is really important, right? If you're among 41.6% of the listings in the US and you have that Superhost status, then you're telling those guests that are looking to book your property that you have that criteria that I just mentioned. Meaning your property has been proven to be of high standard, that you are a reliable host, and they can expect a great experience, or at least an above average experience, right? What are the benefits of being a superhost? There's 4 real benefits that you get as a superhost. Number one, and it's probably the most critical one, is that as a superhost, you have better visibility. Not only is Airbnb going to push you, on the first or second page of a search, but more importantly, guests can filter you out, meaning they can go on Airbnb and put in a filter requirement that you only want to see Superhost status properties. As a side note, if you are a guest, not a host, but if you are a guest, if you are a traveler, person like myself that uses short-term rentals when I travel, I don't use this filter. Now, I've done a lot of videos as to why you shouldn't use this filter without going into great detail, because this video is really focusing on that Superhost status. The reason why I don't use this filter is because if I do, I'm going to miss out on 2 very important things. I'm going to miss out on a lot of hidden gems or properties that are phenomenal but lost the Superhost status. And then number 2, I'm more likely to get a better rate because the property does not have that Superhost status than a big deck. Anyway, now as a host, you want that higher rate, right? So visibility is going to be 1. Number 2, that badge as a superhost, as I mentioned, it recognizes your commitment to providing exceptional hospitality. So that's a huge benefit because it tells the world that Airbnb has recognized you as being a great host. Number 1 and number 2 is going to give you number 3, which is a higher, number 3 and number 4, which is a higher occupancy rate, right? That goes into number 4, which is increased annual revenue, right? Despite listings without Superhost status having slightly higher average daily occupancy rates, here's the revenue. Superhosts enjoy nearly 13% higher annual revenue than those that don't have Superhost status, right? So just in terms of numbers, I'm going to give you a property that I have that with Superhost status the entire year. That property I generated $58,277. When I lost the Superhost status, that property generated $37,293. So there's a big difference with the Superhost badge or status and the one without. Here's a couple of things. Now we're going to talk about as to once you have that Superhost status, how to keep it. If you've been a host for a long time, and for me, people that have been hosting for more than 2 to 3 years, that's what I mean by being a host for a long time. You already know the answer to this. Keeping that Superhost status is very difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because it is based on your entire portfolio. So one of the recommendations that I'm going to give you is to split up your portfolio. Now, if you only have 1 or 2 properties, you can still do this, but it may not be as beneficial. But what we do is, and we have a very large portfolio, is that it used to be that we had 7 to 8 properties per account, Airbnb account. That became a little bit too large for us to handle. So now we're up to having 15 properties per account. And it's still a lot, but we highly recommend that you have multiple accounts and that you place each property or divide your portfolio among the 3. The reason we recommend that is because, again, the Superhost status applies to the account. So if you have 1 property that gets a bad review and lowers your 4.8 or lowers your rating number below 4.8, then you just screwed up the entire portfolio. And I'm here to tell you that you're never, I don't care how phenomenal your property is, if you're in this business for longer than 2 years, you're going to get a bad review because you're never going to please everyone. There's going to be someone that doesn't like the decor. There's going to be someone that doesn't like your bed. There's going to be someone that doesn't like the neighborhood. There's going to be someone that doesn't like the color, how you painted the house. And there's going to be someone that doesn't like you. It's impossible to continue to get 5s across the board for an extended period of time. So you're going to lose Superhost status. Now, the beauty about it is, that you can gain it back. This is why I highly recommend you split your portfolio and you open multiple accounts so that one bad rating doesn't affect all your property. That's the first way to keep the Superhost status. The second way, and this is common sense, people, but I have to always repeat this, is that you've got to make sure that you're offering a comfortable, clean, easy to use, or guest-friendly property. What do I mean by guest-friendly? Meaning that it's easy to find. You don't have amenities that are so complicated to use that people get frustrated when they're trying to use it. That meets the needs of the guest, right? That's important. And again, being comfortable is a word that I don't like to use because, again, it goes to preference, right? But clean is a given. If you have a large property, we have a lot of properties that are huge, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 square feet properties. Those properties are very difficult to maintain super clean. So I do give a pass for those hosts that manage that and can't maintain that super high standard of cleaning. Man, but the majority of the properties are 1,500 square feet. The majority of properties on Airbnb are 1,500 square feet or less. There's no excuse why you can't have a super clean house when you have a 1,500 square feet property. Next, I've already mentioned, is making sure that you have a very low cancellation rate. There's really no reason for you to cancel someone unless you have an extenuating circumstance, and in that case, it doesn't count against you. Now, the next thing to keep your Superhost status is making sure your communication is on point. Guests, just like in a relationship, right? Communication is key. And I've done tons of videos on this. To be successful, your communication needs to be on point, right? And that communication starts from the moment you receive the inquiry all the way to after they have checked out of your property. So for example, you have to set the right expectations from the get-go. A lot of properties are not perfect. And I've always said, it's not what you have, is what you do with what you have. So try to set those expectations right off the bat. So for example, if you have a small house, make sure the square footage is noted. Make sure that you even explained in your description that the property is a little small, so that expectation is there. Because oftentimes when people are looking at just photos, and if you're not doing a great job of depicting your property through your photos, that guest may have an expectation that is not realistic or is not the correct expectation of the property. That's starting, that needs to be set from the beginning. Then once the person's on your property, you need to ask how they're doing. You need to help them out with any issue that may arise. And then after they check out, you need to make sure that you reached out to them, again, thanking them for staying on your property. But here's the key. Like, for example, we send out an email the day before they check out, and then we emphasize this email the day after they check out. And that is reminding them that we are going to be reviewing them. If they were good guests, we're going to tell them, listen, we're going to give you a 5-star review. And in turn, we hope we earn the same. And we give an explanation on how that review process works. So for example, a 4, Airbnb will rate you from 1 to 5. But a 4 is a bad review. And we let our guests know that if you rate us a 4, regardless of what you write in the description, that a 4 means that the service we provided and that the property was substandard. It's very important because a lot of people don't know that. And a lot of people think that if they give you a 4, it was a great review. I'm going to take a side note here because this is where that review process sucks with Airbnb. Again, you need to have a 4.8 or higher, which means that you really have to get 5s across the board for the majority of the time. So a 4 or even 2 4s, if you only have a couple of reviews, will take you below that 4.8 standard. Now, if you have hundreds of reviews and you get a 4, it's going to knock you down, but it's not going to hurt your status. But what's important is your reviews carry with you. Like, there's no, after a year, you start from scratch. It doesn't work that way. And that's the problem with the review process. And that is why when you have a property or when you have a portfolio that's 2 to 3 years old, you're going to start to drop because, again, you're not going to please everyone. Hence why I say you have to have multiple accounts. Right. Next is going to be making sure that your guest feels like they got a great deal when they stayed with you. This is where I talk about pricing. And if you are a property manager managing other people's property, this is going to be a tough and contentious point with your owners. Because again, just like with children, parents and homeowners feel like their kids or their property is better and the best in the entire neighborhood. And they want to rate or price their property higher than everyone else. Well, that's a huge mistake. Number one, you need to be competitive. And number two, if you are the highest priced property in that neighborhood, and today most people are very conscious of how they spend their money. I don't want to say frugal, and I forget the word, but anyways, they're conscious of how they spend their money. So they don't want to overpay for a property. It's very rare. But if they do decide to stay at your high priced property, damn it, you better deliver. And you better go beyond the call of duty, meaning go way beyond, meaning your amenities need to be super high. You should be giving welcome gifts. You should have high-end furniture. You should have high-end towels. You should have high-end bedding. You should have some of the best amenities available: pool, jacuzzi, sauna, etc. That should be there if you're going to be the highest priced property in your area. If you want to keep that Superhost status, I highly recommend that you don't overprice your property, that you stay competitive, and that you continue to deliver the best product you possibly can. That is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, list them below. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe, hit that like button. Follow me on Instagram, people. I put a lot of content on Instagram. I provide a lot of information. We also, our sponsor, Dream Vacations, we also put a lot of promotions in there. We give a lot of discounts to our Instagram followers. So if you want to be part of our community, make sure you follow me on Instagram. Buy me a coffee if you want to have a conversation with me. And more importantly, if you want to optimize your listing and learn what really works on Airbnb or what works to maximize and optimize your short-term rental property, then hire us. Love you guys. See you in the next one.